The text from my daughter-in-law came in at 4:48 on a Tuesday afternoon while I was scraping ice off my windshield in the church parking lot. Mom, you're hosting Christmas dinner this year. 22 of us, and we've already let everyone know. Eric will bring the turkey money by Friday. No question mark anywhere in it. I stood there with the scraper in my mitten, the wind off Lake Simcoe going right through my coat, and I read it 3 times before I felt anything at all. Then I typed back the calmest sentence of my whole 66 years. Then you'll want to book a caterer soon. I'm up at the lake place until the weekend. His next call came at 6:40 the following morning. But that wasn't the part that broke my heart. The part that broke my heart came 4 days later, when I scrolled up in a family group chat they'd forgotten still had me in it, and read what my own son had written when he thought I'd already left the room. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, slow and proper, because the order of it matters. If you've ever been told what you were doing for the family instead of asked, if you've ever been treated like the help at your own table, then sit with me a minute. Pour yourself a tea. This one's for you. My name is Roz Carr, though everybody back home in Aurelia just calls me Roz, and for 38 years I taught grade 6 at the same school where I'd once been a student myself. I retired 6 years ago with a small pension and a bad knee and a husband named Hugh, who lasted exactly 19 months into our retirement before his heart gave out on a Sunday afternoon while he was changing the oil in the truck. I found him in the garage. I won't dwell on that. I only mention it because everything that came after, the house, the quiet, the way my family started talking around me instead of to me, it all traces back to the day I became a woman living alone. Hugh and I bought our house on Coldwater Road in 1986, back when you could still do that on a teacher's salary and a millwright's wages if you were careful and went without. We raised our boy in it. Real maple in the backyard. A basement Hugh finished himself one winter with his own 2 hands. A kitchen I painted 4 different colors over the years until I finally landed on a soft butter yellow that I loved. That house was paid off the spring before Hugh died, free and clear. I want you to hold on to that detail because the people in my story forgot all about it, and that turned out to be their whole undoing. My son is named Wesley. He's a good-looking man, 40 now, works in commercial insurance up in Barrie, and somewhere along the way he married a woman named Camille who has never once in 11 years called me anything warmer than Mom, said the way you'd say it to a customer service line. I tried with her. Lord, I tried. I knitted things for the babies. I drove down for every recital and every minor hockey tournament in arenas so cold I'd lose feeling in my toes. I was, for a long time, exactly the kind of grandmother who shows up and shuts up and brings the squares, and I told myself that was love. 2 years after Hugh passed, Wesley and Camille hit a rough patch with money. He'd been let go in a restructuring, and she was off on a leave, and they had the 2 kids, my grandbabies, Hazel, who was 9 then, and little Theo, who was 4. They were behind on the mortgage in Barrie and scared, and Wesley sat at my butter yellow kitchen table and put his head in his hands, and I did what any mother would do. I told them to come stay with me on Coldwater Road. I had 4 bedrooms and 1 old woman rattling around in them. It made sense. It made perfect sense. So I moved up to the cottage. I should explain about the cottage, because it matters more than I knew at the time. Hugh's father left him a little place up on Bass Lake, nothing fancy, a 1.5-story board and batten with a wood stove and a dock that needs redecking every few years. We'd always meant to winterize it properly and never quite did. After Hugh died, I'd put in a propane furnace and better windows, and I found that I liked it up there. I liked the loons. I liked being nobody's anything. So, when Wesley's family needed the house, it wasn't a sacrifice the way people made it sound later. I gave them the big house on Coldwater Road and I took myself off to the lake, and I told them, stay as long as you need, get back on your feet, no rush at all. That was 6 years ago. Here's the thing nobody ever thought to ask me about in all that time. I never put their names on anything. Why would I? The house was mine. I kept paying the property tax. Almost $6,000 a year now, the way assessments have gone in Simcoe County, and I kept the home insurance in my name, and I never asked them for a single dollar of rent. Not once. Not even when Wesley got back on his feet and started doing well in insurance, and Camille went back to work. I let it sit. I told myself a good mother gives without keeping a ledger. My own mother kept ledgers. She gave you a coat in October and reminded you about it every Christmas until you were 40. I swore I'd never be that, so I went all the way the other direction. I gave, and I stayed quiet, and I asked for nothing, and somewhere in those 6 years, they simply stopped thinking of it as my house at all. The driveway became their driveway. The maple became their maple. And I let it, because correcting them felt like becoming my mother. That silence cost me. I just didn't know the bill was running. Now back to that Tuesday in the church lot with the ice scraper and the text that said 22 for Christmas. And a turkey money drop-off like I was a venue they'd rented. I want to be honest about the first feeling, because it wasn't anger. It was a kind of tired recognition. 40 years of Christmases came up in me at once. The ones where I cooked for 16 and did dishes till the carols ended, and the men fell asleep in front of the hockey game. The Easters, the first communions, the summer barbecues where I'd be flipping burgers in the heat while everyone else swam. I'd called all of that love for so long that I'd never once stopped to notice the thank yous had gone thin years ago. People had stopped seeing me and started seeing the casserole. But this text was different, and I knew it standing right there in the cold. It wasn't a request that assumed I'd say yes. It was a decision that didn't need me in the room. We've already let everyone know. They'd told 22 people before they'd told the one woman who'd have to brine the turkey and roll the cabbage rolls and find chairs for everybody. So I typed my calm little reply about the caterer, and I got in my car, and I drove the half hour up to Bass Lake with my hands very steady on the wheel. My sister phoned that evening. I should tell you about my sister. Her name is Davina. She's 4 years younger than me, and she has a voice she uses when she wants something, warm as a quilt on top, with a wire running underneath it. "Roz, honey," she said, "don't make this hard on the little ones. It's Christmas." "I'm not making anything hard, Davina." Wesley's stretched thin. Camille's stressed right out. "You pulling back like this, it looks like you're being difficult." "I didn't pull back from anything," I said. "I was never asked in the first place." She did her long sigh, the theatrical one she's had since we were girls. "People are starting to worry about you, you know, up there at the lake all by yourself." That stopped me cold with the milk halfway into the fridge. "Worry about me how?" "Well, you forget things. You've been off on your own a long while. It's an awful lot of house for one woman who's getting a bit muddled to be in charge of." I set the milk down very carefully on the counter. The fridge hummed. Out the window, the lake was already going black. "Davina," I said, "how do you know the dinner's for 22? I only got that text a few hours ago." The line went quiet a half second too long. "Wesley told me, obviously. We talk. Of course they do. We said our good nights, and I stood in that dark cabin a long while, forgetful, muddled, an awful lot of house." She'd lined those words up like she'd rehearsed them in the car on the way home from somewhere. Like they were somebody else's lines and she'd only just learned them. I didn't know the shape of it yet, but I could smell it. Somewhere there was a script, and my own baby sister had already memorized her part. I couldn't sleep, so I did what I do when Hugh feels too far away. I took his old tackle box down off the shelf in the back room. He kept the important things in it after he stopped fishing. Not lures, but the small museum of a life. Our wedding photo gone soft at the corners. The stub from the Tragically Hip show in '92 that he swore was the best night of his life before the kids came. And down at the bottom, in a yellowed envelope, the deed to the house on Coldwater Road. 1 page, grantee. Rosalind Margaret Carr. My name alone. Hugh had put it in my name back when his work had him worried about liability, and we'd long since stopped thinking about it. I held that page, and I wasn't holding a weapon. I was holding the kitchen, where I'd nursed Wesley through the chicken pox, the back step where Hugh proposed to me twice because he forgot he'd already done it. I put it back under the photographs and closed the lid and told myself the worst of this week was a rude text and a sister with a sharp tongue. I made a tea I didn't drink. I went to bed, and I didn't yet know I'd need that single page. The call came at 6:40. I knew before I looked. "What did you do?" Wesley said. No good morning. Tight and clipped. Good morning to you too, Wes. The caterer won't confirm. They keep asking who owns the house. Why are they asking me that? I pulled the quilt up around my shoulders and looked out at the gray lake. I haven't done a thing, Wesley. Then why won't they take my deposit? I don't know their paperwork, love. Maybe they're careful about whose property they're setting up in. It's my house, he said, and there it was. Out loud at last, said like a fact he'd never in his life thought to test. Is it? I said. Soft, just the two words, with a little hook in them. Silence, then louder, faster. You know what I mean. Just phone them and tell them it's fine. Fix it. I'm at the lake until the weekend, Wesley. And like I said, you'll want a caterer. I hung up, and my hands were perfectly steady, and I noticed the steadiness, the way you'd notice that it had started to snow. He thought the problem was a fussy vendor. The problem was a question he'd never once thought to ask in 40 years of being my son. Whose name is on the house? I took my coffee out to the dock, and I sat with it, and I worked it through. Now, you have to understand, I know a little something about how things get booked in this county. I spent 4 summers after I retired doing the books and the front desk for my friend Brenda, who ran the best event catering kitchen between Aurelia and Gravenhurst before she sold it. Booking anyone good the week before Christmas is impossible. They're all spoken for by the middle of November. If Wesley had somehow landed 30-odd covers this close to the holiday, there was really only one outfit it could be. The big one, the one Brenda used to run, now run by her old sous chef. And that outfit has a policy I happen to know cold. For any large private event in a home, the contract has to be signed by the registered owner of the property, the name on the title at the land registry. Not a guest. Not somebody living there, plus a damage deposit, because 30 people and 2 turkeys can do real harm to a house. It's a sensible rule. It exists precisely to stop somebody throwing a big party at a house that isn't theirs. Wesley had walked straight into it. He'd given them the Coldwater Road address. They'd run it against the registry, and the title came back attached to a name that wasn't his. He had no idea why their paperwork was so particular. He had no idea the muddled old woman he kept phoning had spent 4 years inside that exact trade and still knew every rule of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The second call came at 8:20 from a number I knew by heart. Roz, it's Brenda's old shop. It's Priya. I'm sorry to bug you the week before Christmas. Priya Anand had come up under Brenda as a line cook, and she'd bought the business outright 2 years back. Steady hands, stubborn streak, I always liked her. You're never a bother, sweetheart. What's wrong? Probably nothing. But a fellow called yesterday, Wesley Carr, booked a 22-cover Christmas dinner. A careful pause. At your address, Roz. Your house on Coldwater. I closed my eyes and let it land. He gave it as his own, she went on. Got snippy when I asked for the registered owner's signature, so I held the booking. Wanted to check with you first. He made it sound like you weren't keeping track of things so well anymore. There it was, the proof of who Priya really was. She could have just taken the deposit and run the gig. Instead, she protected my name when I wasn't even in the room to know it needed protecting. I'm keeping track of everything just fine, I said, and my voice didn't shake. For the first time in a long while, Priya, I'm seeing all of it clear as glass. She was quiet a moment. I wasn't about to let a stranger throw a party over your name without asking you. You're the one taught Brenda half of what she taught me. I nearly went to pieces, hearing that, not from sorrow, from being seen. Hold the booking, I told her. Don't confirm a thing. I'll ring you Monday. I hung up with the start of a plan in me, and I still didn't have the worst piece of it. That came that same afternoon from my daughter-in-law. Camille almost never texts me directly, but there it was. Hi, Mom. Hope the lake's restful. When you're back, can we sit down, just the family? It's time we talked about the house. For the kids' sake, mostly. The house. Not the dinner. The house, like a file that had been sitting in a drawer with my name on it. 8 seconds later, a second text. A link, no words. I tapped it. A glossy webpage bloomed up. Maplewood Gardens Retirement Residence. Gracious assisted living in the heart of Simcoe County. Silver-haired strangers laughing over a card game in good light. Then a third text. Oops, wrong one, sorry! I set the phone face down on the dock rail and watched a loon go under and not come up for a long, long time. Wrong one. Of course. The same way Davina just happened to know the head count. The same way the whole family had all at once decided I was slipping. The pieces weren't joined up in my head yet, but they were all the same color. And the color was not a kind one. I'll stop here a second. If you've ever gotten a message like that, sweet on the surface with a blade folded up inside it, you know the exact feeling that's sitting in my stomach as I tell you this. If you do, type "I know that feeling" down below. It tells me who I'm really talking to tonight. Now let me show you what came the next morning, because that's where this whole thing turned over. It landed at 9:17 in the big family chat, the one with all 40-some relatives in it, cousins, in-laws, Davina, Wesley, Camille, people I'd met maybe twice at a wedding. Camille posted it. I think her thumbs got ahead of her sense. Okay, everyone, here's the Christmas plan. After the toast, before we open gifts, Aunt Davina starts gentle, real concerned about how Mom's been forgetting things and shouldn't be alone up at that cottage anymore. Then I bring out the Maplewood brochure. Keep it loving. Keep it a bit sad. She's getting confused these days anyway, so it shouldn't be a hard sell. We're only protecting the family home for the kids. Wesley has the transfer paperwork ready for her to sign right there. Don't let her get cornered into saying no in front of everybody. She won't want to make a scene. I read it once. Then I read it again, the way you reread a doctor's letter. 40-some people had just seen it. For about 90 seconds, it sat there in the open. Then Camille again. Whoops, wrong chat, ignore that, deleting, and it vanished off everyone's screens. But not off mine. I'd already pressed the 2 buttons on my phone that take a picture of the screen. Twice, to be sure. Saved. I sat very still at that little cottage table. The lake threw morning light across the ceiling. Hugh's coffee tin sat where it always sits. They weren't asking to borrow my house anymore. They were planning to take it, and to take it clean, they first had to take me, my name, my memory, my standing in my own family. The plan was to stand me up in front of 22 witnesses and call me confused, slide paper under my hand while everyone watched, so that saying no would look like the tantrum of a failing old woman who didn't know what was good for her. She's getting confused anyway, so it shouldn't be a hard sell. That was the worst of it. Not the rude text, not the brochure. It was the ordinary office cruelty of being scheduled for erasure, penciled in between the toast and the gifts like a chore on a list. My own son had read that message and added one line of his own. Sounds good. I'll have the quitclaim ready. I didn't cry. I didn't ring anybody up to scream. I got up and I put the kettle on and I let the tea steep the full 4 minutes, the way my mother never had the patience to. They didn't just want my house. They wanted me gone first. And now I had it, in their own words, saved in 2 photographs, the whole script they'd written for me. So I sat down to write the ending myself. Here's what I want you to understand about quiet people. We don't blow up. We get clear. I didn't holler into the lake. I poured the tea. I sat, and I let myself feel exactly how badly it hurt. And it hurt like a bruise you don't know is there until something presses on it. My boy. The one I nursed through the chicken pox. He'd written sounds good. Then I got up and took down the tackle box again and lifted out that single yellowed page, and this time I held it differently. 2 nights before it had been a memory. That morning it was a tool. One name. Mine. Sole owner, free and clear, no mortgage to lean on, no cosigner to argue with. For 6 years I'd kept quiet about it, terrified of turning into my mother with her ledgers and her leashes. I'd swallowed my own ground just to keep from standing on theirs. But there is a world of difference between using what you own to control your children and simply refusing to let them rob you blind, and it took me 66 years and a cottage table to learn it. I photographed the deed too. 3 pictures lived in my phone now, the title and the 2 of their plan. Then I called the one person who'd known Hugh and me for 30 years. My lawyer is named Frances Okafor, and she's been my lawyer and my friend since before either of us had gray in our hair. She doesn't waste words, which I have always admired. I told her all of it, the text, the caterer, Davina's rehearsed worry, the brochure, the message in the chat. I read it to her word for word off the screenshot. She was quiet when I finished. Then, Roz. You still own the Coldwater house outright. Sole title, one name. Mine, and they've lived there how long? Paying what? 6 years. Nothing. No lease, no rent, not a dollar. Then they're occupants you've permitted. No tenancy agreement, no fixed term. In Ontario, you can end that with proper written notice. We do it cleanly, on paper, and there's nothing dramatic about it. It's the plainest part of property law there is. I let out a breath I think I'd been holding since 2018. There's more we can do, she said. We put the house into a trust. You name who it goes to, you set the terms, and then nobody can ever pressure you into signing it away, because there'll be nothing loose left to sign. It's locked in a way only you control. Hazel and Theo, I said at once. The grandbabies. When they're grown. Not their parents. Them. We can absolutely do that. No secret clauses, no clever ambush, just a notice and a trust, both as ordinary as rain. When can you come in? I told them I'd be back by the weekend. Monday morning. I'll bring the deed. Frances wanted to do it the gentle way, and I understood why. We could courier the notice today, she said. Quiet, private, no audience. You'd never have to sit through that dinner at all. It was good advice. It was the advice I'd have given anyone else. No, I said. No. They mean to do this in front of 22 people, Frances. They want witnesses. They want me cornered and small in a room full of family. I looked out at the gray water. So the truth can come out in that same room, calm, in front of those same witnesses. You don't owe those people a performance. I'm not performing anything, I said. I'm just going to stop hiding what's already true. She sighed, but I heard the smile inside it. You're going to walk straight into your own ambush. I'm going to keep my word and come for Christmas dinner. I'm just going to bring the right paperwork. I had one more call to make. I rang Priya back. Confirm the booking, I told her. 22 covers, Christmas Day, Coldwater Road. And send me the contract. I'll sign it as the registered owner, because I am. Run it under my account, not his. The deposit's mine. And Priya, make it the best meal that family has ever sat down to. I mean that. I could hear her smiling down the line. Yes, chef. I drove down on the Saturday, 2 days early, and I stayed with Frances and Barry, and we got everything signed and witnessed and registered Monday morning. The notice to vacate, the trust, every comma in its place. I slept better those 2 nights in Frances's spare room than I had in months. Christmas Day, I drove up Coldwater Road at 1:30 and parked behind 6 other cars in a driveway I'd shoveled for 30 years. The maple was bare and dusted white. The windows were all lit up gold, and I could see them moving around in there. My family, getting ready to put me in a home and take the very house I was standing in front of. I knocked on my own front door. Wesley opened it, and his face did a complicated thing when he saw me. Mom, you came. I keep my word, love, always have. Inside it was wall-to-wall family, all of them turned to look, and there in the dining room. My dining room. Priya's people had laid out the most beautiful spread, turkey and tourtière and roasted roots, and a trifle in my mother's good cut glass bowl. I'd asked Priya to use that bowl. It was a message, though I was the only one who could read it yet. I hung up my coat. I said my hellos. I let them pour me a glass of wine I didn't drink. And I waited, because I'd read the script, and I knew my cues better than they did. Right on time, between the toast and the gifts, Davina cleared her throat and put on a face like a funeral. Roz, honey, she began, we've all been a little worried about you. Up at that lake all alone, forgetting things. Have I been forgetting things, Davina? I said, pleasant as anything. Tell me which things. I'd like to write them down. A small, nervous laugh ran round the table. Camille reached into her bag and brought out the glossy Maplewood brochure and set it by my plate, gentle and sad, just like she'd planned. Mom, we love you. This place is beautiful. We're only thinking of what's best and of protecting the family home for Hazel and Theo. That's good of you, I said. Protecting the family home. Let's talk about that home. I reached into my own bag and took out the folder Frances had made me, and I set it down next to the brochure. Because there seems to be some confusion about whose home it is, and I'd hate for anyone to stay confused on Christmas. Wesley had a paper of his own half out of an envelope by then, the quitclaim, ready for my hand. He went still. I'm 66 years old, I said, to the whole table, easy and clear, and I am sharper than every single person sitting at it. So let me be the one to clear things up. I opened the folder. This is the deed to this house. One name on it, mine. It has been mine, alone, free and clear, since before your father passed, and it stayed mine every single one. Of the 6 years I let you live here for nothing, while I paid the taxes and the insurance from the cottage. The room had gone very quiet. The kind of quiet where a person who fully expected to win starts to understand they haven't. Now, I went on, I happen to know how this evening was supposed to go, because I read it. All of it. I looked at Camille. After the toast, before the gifts, Aunt Davina opens, gentle, concerned. Then the brochure. Keep it loving, keep it sad. She's getting confused anyway, so it shouldn't be a hard sell. Camille's face drained right out. Did I get the wording right? I can read it off my phone if I've muddled it. I do forget things after all. Nobody moved. Davina's mouth opened and shut. That was when the doorbell rang. I'd asked her to come at 2, and Frances Okafor is a woman who's never been late to anything in her life. I let her in myself, in her good coat, holding a single envelope. This is Wesley and Camille Carr? Frances said, calm and clear, and crossed the room and handed the envelope to my son. I'm Mrs. Carr's lawyer. This is written notice to vacate the property at this address. 60 days, as Ontario law provides. It's all in order. There's also the matter of the catering. Your mother's the registered owner, so the contract and the deposit are hers. The booking you placed under your own name was declined. You'll want to settle the $800 you were charged for the cancellation of your separate hold. Wesley took the envelope because his hand opened before his brain could stop it. I bent down then to Hazel, 15 now and trying so hard not to cry, and little Theo, 10, gone wide-eyed at the end of the table. None of this is about you two, I told them quiet. I love you both right up to the moon. The house is yours one day. Yours when you're grown, no matter what anybody does. I'll see you very soon, I promise. Hazel threw her arms round my neck. I straightened up and spoke to the room one last time, easy and warm. The dinner's all paid for, every bit. Please, sit, eat, enjoy yourselves. The turkey's the best in the county. Prisha saw to it. I let myself smile. And I'm at the lake until the new year if anyone needs me, though I don't expect anyone will. I picked up my purse. I left the deed lying right there on the table next to the brochure for them to read as long as they liked. I thanked Priya's crew at the door and squeezed Priya's hand, and I walked out my own front door into the cold, bright Christmas afternoon, got into my car, and drove north toward Bass Lake with the windows cracked just enough to smell the snow. They were out in 51 days, 9 days early, to dodge the formal filing Frances had ready and waiting. Wesley paid the $800 cancellation himself because the booking had carried his name and not one line of it had ever carried mine. They found a place to rent over in Barrie, closer to his work, which Camille had wanted for years anyway. Davina rang me twice in January, the first time to apologize, the second time, when that got her nowhere, to ask after her share of the house as if there'd ever been one. I told her there was no share, there was no sale, and there'd be no more calls. I haven't heard from her since, and I sleep just fine. The house is in the trust now, held for Hazel and Theo, each to come into their half when they turn 25. Nobody can ever pressure it out of my hands again, because there's nothing loose left to sign. I didn't sell it and I didn't move back in. I let it sit warm and waiting for 2 kids who didn't do a thing wrong. And here's the part that matters most to me. The part I was most afraid of losing that night at the cottage table with the cold tea. I kept the grandbabies. I have Hazel and Theo every other weekend. We make pancakes at the lake and skip stones off Hugh's old dock, and we do not talk about that Christmas, not at all. Wesley and I speak now and then, careful as 2 people walking on the dock before the boards are re-nailed. He has never once truly said he's sorry. He said he was under a lot of pressure, which is a very different thing wearing sorry's coat. I've decided to let him keep his version. I don't need a confession. I needed him to learn where the line is, and now he knows. The line is bright, and it holds. I still do Christmas. I want you to know that. I'm not bitter, and I never once stopped loving my family. But now I cook when I'm asked, Not when I'm assigned, and there's a whole world between those two little words. It took me 66 years to move into it. Last year, I roasted a turkey at the cottage for 6 people who all said thank you, and Theo carved it, badly and proudly, and Hazel set the table with my mother's good glass. The cottage stayed mine. The house went to the children. My names stayed on every single thing that was ever mine to begin with. I didn't stop being family. I just stopped being furniture. If there's one thing I'd hand across the table to you tonight, it's this. Kindness without a boundary isn't love. It's only a door you forgot to lock. That's my whole story. One text, one quiet no, one name on a deed. If it reminded you that what you give is yours to give and not theirs to assume, share it with somebody who needs to hear it tonight, and I'll see you next time.